This episode offers psychosocial education designed to inspire and motivate our listeners. The information provided does not constitute a therapeutic relationship nor a substitute for professional mental health care. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 911, go to your nearest emergency room, or for listeners in the United States, text 988 for the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Warning, this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Thanks for tuning in to Harvesting Happiness today for a healthy serving of consciously prepared brain food. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen, your host. Since 2010, we've been broadcasting sound ideas for better well-being. Each week, we spotlight diverse thinkers and doers who are contemporary trendsetters and change agents, devoting their lives to creating a better world. I invite you to listen and change how you think about human happiness. Our award-winning content is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where you will learn about secular mindfulness, magic for peace of mind. My guest today is globally recognized mindfulness educator and best-selling author Susan Kaiser Greenland. She specializes in distilling wisdom traditions and scientific research into straightforward, everyday practices. Hallelujah. She holds a Juris Doctor degree from New York University School of Law and initially worked as an attorney before shifting her focus to mindfulness education. In the early 2000s, she pioneered the introduction of secular mindfulness into classrooms through her Inner Kids model. Her latest work, Real World Enlightenment, encapsulates her ongoing dedication to mindfulness. Susan's contributions have been featured in prominent publications such as the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, USA Today, and CNN, and she's in the house to give us some tips because we need them desperately, Susan.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you and be with you and jump into this subject because you break the subject matter of mindfulness down for us in digestible, easy steps and tools.
Well, thank you. You know, I worked with kids. I started by teaching mindfulness to kids, and that was 30-ish years ago. And what's great working with kids is, you know, it's really clear. You have to make it very simple. You don't need to dumb it down, but you need to make it simple. And you have to put it in a context that they can understand. Well, so many parents and so many teachers came in trying to help the kids in their lives who told me later that they tried meditation on their own using techniques that adults use or are generally taught, and they just couldn't make it stick. It just didn't resonate with them. But once they started doing these kids' activities, then everything shifted and they were able to get these glimpses of what I'm calling real world enlightenment. So that's how it started. It started with kids, and, you know, the kids kind of teach us everything. And then it expanded now to adults. And for the past 20 or so years, I've been working mostly with adults, training them in how to work with kids and with this kind of model.
Well, we need it now more than ever. Many of us are concerned citizens, regardless of what your political stance is. I think that many countries in the world, including but not limited to the United States, are on edge because the state of democracy, it feels very frail, feels brittle, and we're stressed. I can speak for myself. I know that. I'm stressed.
Yeah, that's my experience and the experience of most people that I meet. And also, because I have this book coming out, I've been on all sorts of shows and podcasts like this one. And thank you again for having me on. And this is what is up for people because everything feels quite risky. And I think what's scary about that, from my perspective, is that what often bubbles up, also especially with the younger generation of voters, is this sense of why bother? The system is rigged. It's all set. What I do will have little or no meaning. So why bother? And that's where the critical thinking and the open-minded, open-hearted practices of the mindfulness and meditation practice really, really come to help, because they do give you a sense not just of why bother, the reason to bother, but they also give you specific directions and instructions that you can practice that help modify your mindset so that you know how to bother, you know how to respond in a way that's skillful, that's wise and compassionate, but also that doesn't burn you out, because that's what happens to so many caregivers and so many people out there working in the world to make the world a better place, is they just get completely burnt out.
Yeah. Well, the burnout rate on life is quite high right now, right? We are called to a lot of responsibility on a daily basis with our work, with our families, with our community service. In many cases, people of our generation are caretaking on two different levels, where we've got our parents are aging or there are other family members who need care. So we're spread thin. And the idea that the emotional toll that modern living has caused needs to be managed. We need to manage it rather than let it manage us. And that's the point of the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it all starts with awareness. We can't manage anything until we're first aware of it. And then once we're aware of it, there are lots of awareness-based strategies that help us kind of reverse what we're talking about, which Daniel Goleman coined a phrase called emotional hijack. So we reverse that emotional hijack to ground ourselves. Because when we're scared, when we're stressed, when we're upset, when we're hungry and tired, our bandwidth narrows and our capacity to think critically actually narrows along with it. But if we can move our attention into away from what's upsetting us into a sensory experience, into a pleasant present moment experience, then what can happen is we can start to reverse that emotional hijack, bring us back down into a more grounded place. And then that perspective we have goes from being narrow to be a little bit more open. And so we can be more open-minded and open-hearted.
Give us an example of how what you've just shared translates to a mindfulness exercise you might give a kid versus an adult.
Well, I can give you an exercise that I absolutely would give to both, because it's really so simple. It's so simple. And it goes into, it is built upon this survival mechanism we have to pay attention to what scares us. So this idea that the reason we are wired to pay attention to what scares us is so that we can fend off physical threats, right?
Yes.
But in our current workaday world, often we respond as if we have a physical threat when that's really not the case. And that's just our hardwiring. We have to be compassionate with ourselves and not beat ourselves up about the way we're hardwired. But there are things we can do to help modify that so that instead of hyper focusing on what's upsetting us, that we can broaden our focus to also not ignore what the problem is, but to also include that there's good stuff happening too. So 3 good things is one of my all-time favorite activities for kids. And then all of a sudden adults say, hey, this works, I'm going to do it too. And so let's say you spill your coffee on your computer, which I did recently, which believe me is not the most fun. Stressful. My computer was in the shop for a few days. Luckily, I had the extended warranty. So let's say that happens. You notice it. This is bad. But then at the same time, you say, okay, what are 3 good things? And those 3 good things could be things like, I'm in a position I can get my computer fixed. I feel pretty healthy today, or I have close relationships with my family or friends. But sometimes when things are really, really tough, especially for adults, or when children feel like they've been bullied and that they're all beaten up, the good things can be as simple as, I am just so happy to have this comfortable bed to lie down in right now. So we can get very granular to find those good things if it's hard to think of things right off the bat. So that idea of 3 good things when we're feeling stressed or upset helps us kind of get a bigger picture without ignoring the problem at hand.
And I think to add to what you're saying about the 3 good things is that usually the present moment, like right where we're sitting right now, is 99.9% of the time just fine, right? It's the rumination or the looking back through the rearview mirror or catastrophizing what could happen in the future that really stirs us up. But
Absolutely.
now is usually fine.
Absolutely. And slogan practice is another one of these grounding strategies that is thousands and thousands of years old. And the idea of a slogan practice is you just repeat something in your mind as a grounding strategy. What that does is if you're repeating something in your mind, a phrase, for example, like right now, I'm okay, because you're right. Most of the time, right now, we are okay. If you keep repeating that, you're not only reminding yourself that right now you're okay, but you're also keeping your mind so busy that you can't be thinking, you can't be spinning, you can't be worrying about or planning or going back and reliving. And that idea of keeping your mind focused on what's happening right now and away from ruminating, away from anxiety, away from reliving, that is a very, very powerful grounding strategy. And right now I'm okay is a well-used slogan now that people really use to remind themselves of just what you said.
Solid. Solid. I'm okay right now. And,
Yeah.
The slogan practice, another way of calling this is the mantra, right? And what I love
Mhm.
about your methodology is it puts it into just simple terms. We don't need to have other names. We're calling it what it is. And that slogan that you talk about can be anything, right? It can be some kind of
Yes.
safe word you create in your mind, like ice cubes.
Yes. Yeah. And it is a mantra. I mean, and the great, but what I really remember my background is as a lawyer, and I've spent so much time in public schools. I wanted to make this work accessible to everybody.
Yes.
So a word like mantra can really throw people. But so that's why slogan is, more secular, but it is in the benefit of these slogan practices or the mantra practices in a formal meditation practice or visualization when you picture something in your head is in addition to this grounding quality that they have, they also hone concentration. They develop concentration. So for all of us, when we're living in a world where everything is trying to fragment our conversation, where we're on the social media feeds and it's doing everything it possibly can, it's designed to hijack our concentration. These kind of practices that require us to concentrate on an anchor on one thing and really keep our focus there, that helps us build back that muscle of concentration.
We're going to need to take a break in a couple of minutes, but before we go there, I want to talk about the kinds of meditation and what you have distilled this down to, because I think people are daunted because they've been told there need to be one way or one technique, or you have to do it 20 minutes a day, twice a day in order for it to be effective, which is not true. Research has shown that it actually is not the case. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then we'll take that break. But first,
Yeah,
tell us.
absolutely. And thank you for that because so many people have tried to meditate and they're simply unable to sit still. And honestly, I was one of those people. When I first learned to meditate, I was pregnant and my husband was fighting stage 4 cancer. He's fine now, but he took me to learn to meditate. I could not stay on that cushion for more than maybe 3 minutes. There were just too many thoughts and emotions in my mind, and I just bolted out of the room. Of course, he's the guy with cancer and he's just sitting there fine, it's just funny how those kind of things work. So, yeah, not everybody can sit still, but there are different contemplative methods that can be used. There's walking or any kind of movement, squeezing a pillow or going back and forth, standing up. There's also things like not just feeling your breathing. People think meditation is just breath awareness. It's picturing something in your head, doing some kind of a visualization, scanning your body, whether you're sitting, standing, or lying down, paying very close attention to the sensations. And also for those of us who are just really more prone toward analysis, there's analytical practices where we ask our question during meditation. We don't use that time to analyze it. We just see what bubbles up. But afterwards, we sit and we write down and we do some analysis. So there's all sorts of of different ways, but most important to remember is that we can drop in brief moments of awareness into our day anytime, anywhere, in the line at the DMV, while you're driving carpool, when you're stuck waiting for whatever, or when you just see a beautiful sunrise and you want to just soak it up. So just dropping those brief moments of awareness in throughout our day over and over and over again, what that does is that interrupts our autopilot and it gets us into the habit of being present and being here right now.
Love these tips. We're going to take a pause, and when we come back, we will continue the conversation with my guest today, Susan Kaiser Greenland. She is the author of Real World Enlightenment, Discovering Ordinary Magic in Everyday Life. To learn more, you can find her on most social platforms at Susan K. Greenland or Susan Kaiser Greenland. That includes X, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. She's got it all covered. Let's take the pause. We'll be right back. Harvesting Happiness is rooted in science. Our work facilitates applied positive psychology practices through media and consulting. We're committed to sound ideas for better well-being, leading to increased life satisfaction and a better world for everyone. We're not into pseudoscience or quick fixes. We're focused on common sense backed by rigorous research. Healthy critical thinking is the foundation for our discussions. We encourage you to challenge preconceptions and explore ideas with a curiously discerning mind. Collaboration with our guests is united by an inclusive vision to boost resilience, critical thinking, communication, and problem solving through civilized discourse and pleasurable relational engagement for everyone. Each day, we have the intellectual freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable, regardless of external circumstances. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, please seek support because good psychological health is vital to the achievement of a healthy and satisfying life. Visit harvestinghappiness.com for psychosocial and educational services that boost emotional and social intelligence. And we're back, continuing the conversation with my guest today, Susan Kaiser Greenland. We're talking about secular mindfulness, magic for peace of mind. Let's get back to the conversation. Susan, I so appreciate you giving us tips for practicing mindfulness that stray from the normal meditation prescription. You know, that we can do this on our own terms at several times of the day that creates a sense of presence. Could you talk a little bit about the monkey mind and when it strays and how to bring it back to the present moment? Because people often think, oh, I can't do it. I can't center myself. I can't stay focused. And that's not necessarily the object, right?
That's right. And I think what's important before getting into specific techniques is to give it a context which goes right along with what you were saying at the beginning. The fact of the matter is all of us know this, where there's many, many different personality types. We know about introversion, we know about extroverted people, but as far as meditation, there's also people who want to be able to move, who want to be able to sit still, who want to be able to relate. People often forget that these practices are really only done on the cushion, at least from my perspective, so that we take them out into our actions and relationships. So with these different types of personality types, some more analytical, some more emotional, some more sensory, responding to sensory stuff, we have to give everybody a different way of accessing these tools, regardless of their personality type. So that's the important thing to keep in mind whenever you're working with a group of people or with anyone, or if you're having a little trouble, you can think, wow, is this practice that I have been given or that I found on the internet or that somebody suggested on an app, is this practice aligned with what really lands with me, with my kind of general personality type? So given that, one of the things that we really have to remember is that our minds will go, 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 right? And the more
yes.
and the more we try to stop it from going, the faster it goes. And if anyone listening doesn't believe me, I would ask you to take just one moment and do everything you can. Close your eyes and try really, really hard not to think about a white bear. You can think of anything else. You can do anything else you want, but just don't think about a white bear. Well, if you're like almost everybody else, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Of course, the white bear, because the seed had been planted.
That's right. That's right. So the more we try not to think about something, usually the more it comes up. So what do we do about that? Well, it's a couple of different strategies. One is the one we've already talked about, which is we move our attention to an anchor. An anchor is a neutral or a pleasant present moment object. So that anchor could be the slogans we were talking about before. The anchor could be the feeling of breathing, the sound in the rooms. The anchor could be thinking about things you appreciate. But it sounds like a little bit of a distraction technique. And it is a little bit of a distraction technique, but the effect of it is it brings your attention away from what you're thinking about into a more grounded place so that you can de-escalate the escalating thoughts. So that's the first thing. It's called anchor practice. The other practice it's a little more advanced and not as useful for kids if you're thinking about this in the context of kids, because kids are a little too young for this developmentally, is to do nothing. And what I mean by doing, it's called non-meditation. And what I mean by doing nothing is just, you got all these thoughts and emotions running around in your mind. You just don't engage with them. You don't try to change them. You don't try to solve them. You don't try to fix them. You don't move your attention. You just relax and allow them to come, go, and change. And that usually takes a little bit of practice. You have to have pretty well honed attentional qualities in order to do that. But with a little bit of a practice, that's a very relaxing method, because in a world where we're all trying to do, go, 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 because it's sort of what the culture is asking of us, the idea of just letting go and trusting that all these thoughts and emotions will come, they will go, and for certain, they will change. So that's the second. And then the third is a visualization, the idea of bringing to mind a picture in your head of something. Maybe it's a beautiful place. Maybe it's a safe place. Maybe it's something that you just really, really love, but just bringing to mind a picture in your head and staying with that. And that is also a grounding strategy. So those are three ways to deal with the monkey mind you're talking about.
The second one, going back to the second one, because I think that presents a challenge for many adults, is this stew of thought that we're marinating in, and to try and calm all of that down. And rather than trying to work against it, right, resist it, you're saying invite it in. Oh, yes, there are my thoughts. There's my anxiety. There's my worry. There it is. There it is. There it is. Watch that. And eventually the mind kind of like just times out on it.
That's right. That's right. If we do that with the attitude, with a bit of a light touch, with a bit of a sense of humor about ourselves, because these stories, they're likely not new ones. They've been probably going around for a long time. And with some curiosity, because what happens is that we tend to think absolutely everything, including the stories in our head, are true. They feel that way, so we think that they're true. And we also tend to think that they're solid, that they're just fixed. And even though we know, we act like they're solid or fixed, or we act like they're true, when really deep down we know that that's not the case. So by just relaxing and looking at all the activity of our minds and hearts with some lighthearted curiosity, what's one of the first things we see is that these thoughts and emotions are made up of all sorts of different parts and pieces that are constantly in play, and they're interdependent, and they're moving around, and they're in flux, and everything is changing. And it's the opposite of being fixed like this. It's actually quite fluid and quite ever changing. And as we start to see that, we loosen our grip on them. We loosen their grip on us, and we loosen our need to hold on to them so tightly. And that's where transformation begins.
That's the magic, I think, when we can allow, and it is a process of allowing, which can be challenging at first. right?
Yeah.
Because we've got such a grip and an opinion about our thoughts and our feelings, which have nothing to do with facts. Those are separate,
Mhm.
like sort of news flash, hate to break anybody's heart, right? Thoughts and feelings are just thoughts and feelings.
Yep. Yep. They're just thoughts and feelings, and they come and they go and they change, and they're useful information.
Yeah.
So, but analyzing them while they're, while you're in an emotionally charged state tends to be counterproductive. So you can always go back and analyze this later when you're feeling more grounded, when you're not in the grip of the emotional charge. But when you're in the emotional charge, it's really helpful just not to get caught up in them and to, like I said, and like you were talking about, just with some curiosity and with a little bit of lightness and playfulness, just watch the activity of your mind and heart.
Let's talk for a moment about the pursuit, and I'm going to do a mental air quote of enlightenment and the fallacy of its state and what it really is.
Well, I'm certainly not saying that classical enlightenment doesn't exist. There are people pursuing on hilltops, in mountaintops, all over the world, pursuing what we think of as classical enlightenment, which is where we uproot all of the negative aspects of our minds and hearts. We uproot greed, uh, aversion, we uproot these poisons. And then even after that, there are more stages of classical enlightenment. But that's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about real world enlightenment. In this book, I wanted to demystify this idea of enlightenment and give people a sense that this is something that not only you can have right now, but it's something that I bet you've already experienced. It's just those moments of connection, sometimes in nature, sometimes when you're in close relationships, sometimes they're very sad moments when you're privileged enough to be with a loved one during their dying process, where all of a sudden your ego falls away and you just feel connected to something far vaster than you can even imagine. And there's just not really any separation between you and everything else that's going on. And it's a non-conceptual experience, and it tends to only last an instant. But I remember having these experiences as a child, certainly often in nature, people tell me they've had these experiences. And I think once you've had an experience like that, if you start seeing, oh, this is something that's available to me, it doesn't have to be an accident, because usually it comes by surprise. And this is something that's available to me. And perhaps I can make, fertilize the ground. I'm a gardener. So, till the ground and fertilize it so that this type of experience is more likely to come more often and last a little bit longer.
To me, what you're describing is their moments of transcendence, right?
Mm-hmm.
That everyday enlightenment is not the byproduct of a pursuit of perfection or some tangible goal, right? It's a fleeting moment of this sense of pure otherworldliness that is humbling. We
That's
talked a
right.
little bit about that intellectual humility before we started our
Mm-hmm.
conversation, official conversation. And I think that's important to share about, because we're perfectionists. We try to strive for perfection, and it's
Mm-hmm.
impossible.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you're right. I love that phrase, moment of transcendence. It's a glimpse of this experience, usually only an instant. The mystics called it oneness. Some people call it an experience of wonder or an experience of awe. But these are the experiences that we're talking about. And I really, really, really appreciate your connecting that with intellectual humility, because for me, the development of a very strong comfort level of understanding the limitations of my all too human mind has been a tremendous relief. As you said earlier, I was a lawyer, I've written books, I was a mom, I was working, all that stuff. I mean, I really understand what it's like to crank and crash. You just work so hard, nose to the grindstone, and then so much into exhaustion and then just crash. I mean, that was my life. for way too long. And sometimes I left a mess in my wake. And it still is, I still have those tendencies to, really bear down and work. But what you start to see is that, and I'm not suggesting people don't work hard, but what you start to see is that we only know so much. If you think of all the causes and conditions that led to you and me being here today, if something had changed in our day this morning, if something had changed in our parents' lives, if something had changed in their parents' lives, going way, way back for generations, you and I would not be here right now at this moment. So what it actually takes for us to get to absolutely every moment, it's actually kind of a statistical improbability that we're here at all. So given that, and given the fact that our pets, dogs, can hear things we can't hear, dolphins and bats navigate the world with a system of radar that we couldn't possibly understand, these things around us are picking up stuff that our human systems can't pick up. Given all of that, it gets a lot easier to realize we can't be so certain that we know all the answers or all the causes and conditions that led to what happened in any situation. And instead of being a scary thing, I myself have found that to be a tremendous relief.
That's the perfect note to say goodbye for now on. My guest today has been Susan Kaiser Greenland, and I thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. We're talking about your book, Real World Enlightenment, Discovering Ordinary Magic in Everyday Life. I invite our listeners to discover more of the magic. Please visit susankaisergreenland.com. Susan is on every social channel that there is. You can find her at Susan K. Greenland or Susan Kaiser Greenland. One of those two variations. She's there. She's everywhere. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you very much. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guest, Susan Kaiser Greenland, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day and remember to be kind to one another. Want to explore more sound ideas for better well-being? Check out our new bonus edition content at More Mental Fitness by Harvesting Happiness on Substack and Medium. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Connect with and follow us on most social media channels. To learn more about lifestyle management and mental fitness consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Harvesting Happiness and More Mental Fitness are produced by Lisa Cypers Kamen, Andrea Mengele, Robin Boyd, Andrea Daly, and the excellent team at Podfly Productions, including Eric Begay, Kimberly Beck, and Alec Guess, in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU, RadioMalibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.